So we are back. We are back. All right, everybody. So we are joined here by Alani. I am very excited. In another life when I'm not handshaking, I'm working on my second startup. Capital is a big thing. Early stage capital is a super big thing. We're going to cover that. Hopefully, we all get something out of it. And this is when I shut up. All right, take it away.
All right, awesome. Firstly, can I share? All right, I will share. Bear with, and let's go. All right, awesome. So my name is Alani, and I have been I've been doing this for quite a while. I've been in the tech space for over 22 years now, and I've played various roles. Started as an engineer, moved more into executive roles, managed teams across the world, got into investment, private equity. Really early adopter, within the Web3 space, consulted with quite a few teams, built ecosystems, built accelerator programs, invested in startups, both from an accelerator program perspective, from a private investment perspective, co-investing perspective. And today, I mentor a lot of startups, and I get them from zero to their first 100K in revenue and put a lot of risk capital on the early stage side. Sometimes I do that solo. Sometimes I do that in conjunction with others. And we all know very well, being a startup founder is like jumping off a cliff while trying to assemble the parachute. So to all of you out there doing this work, salute. So a little bit about me, very briefly. I see someone's laughing. Spent a lot of time in Web 1, Web 2, and now Web 3. Industrial gases, you can go down that list. BAE Systems in the Netherlands, where I ran the enterprise services group and went into PDSI, co-founded that startup. We were actually the first to build shipping container mobile data centers. And we did that very rapidly, and we sold that company, myself and three co-founders, we sold it to Hitachi Data Systems. This was back in 2011. That was my first exit. And the first thing you learn quickly as a founder in those stages is, know how to read contracts, understand who your partners are, and raising a lot of money is not success, it's debt. You can do a $10 million exit and end up with $1 million. So oftentimes we hear this large exit and we wonder why the founders, made out on the other side, just barely what they put in. Went to AstraZeneca and pharmaceuticals in Lucerne, Switzerland, and also in the US, managed a lot of enterprise services teams there as well. Left that, co-founded Flatbed. We built that from 0 to 32,000 gig workers and drivers in the United States alone in less than 6 months. Through that exit, through private equity exit, I advised Harvest. Some of you might know Harvest, the OG of DeFi yield farming. I was an early advisor of theirs, and they scaled out very rapidly. Took that experience, went to Akash Network, did the same there, built their ecosystem, built the accelerator program. Once that was done at Akash, I went to Stellar Development Foundation, did some work there as well. I do a lot of consulting now with realtors, and I help startups basically scale up. And please, if you have any questions, drop them in chat. I'll be reading through them as I'm doing this presentation. One of the lessons I learned through this journey is I made a lot of friends throughout this journey, both Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. And those relationships played a very vital role in understanding how to connect people, how to connect resources, and identify what people really need. Because oftentimes we confuse money with success. And, oftentimes it's easier to get philosophical after you've become successful. That's an ongoing thing. But prior to getting there, you have to learn to enjoy the pain, enjoy the journey, embrace, you attract the things you fear, right? Whatever you're afraid of, it will come to you. Fear can smell the juices we put out. So learn to embrace the pain. The day you do that, it loses its power. To that degree, what's early stage funding? That is the riskiest capital deployment. Your first 100, 200K. The person putting up that money, that's where the biggest risk is. You can call it seed funding, pre-seed funding, post-seed funding, pre-A funding. We can dice it a million different ways. That is the riskiest part. And in my experience, for every $250K check we write, I expect 80% of them to fail. Because think about an entrepreneur's journey. So you get out of bed sometimes you don't even want to get out of bed because you have to put on a brave face and pretend the world is great and everything's fine. Yet inside you are crying, not knowing how you're going to pay your cloud bills tomorrow, right? And through this, you have to go present to a bunch of arrogant investors. You have to go present to new customers. You just have to work through all of that, right? While pretending the world is great. But the day you embrace the pain and you learn to enjoy it, that's the day the pain loses its power and you retake control. That's the power of decentralization. Because think about cloud compute, think about storage, think about Handshake, think about the decentralized nature of the Web3 sphere, as we put it, right? Now you have access, you have options, and the pressure is further reduced a little bit. At the moment, the cognitive load is relatively high, but we're getting there. Now, I'm going to visit a few things here. And that is for early stage state teams, focusing on validating core ideas and establishing product market fit, while laying the foundation for scaling, generally has three characteristics, right? Product development, customer acquisition, team building, metrics, and validation. Focus, right? The challenge is you don't have any money. And the future is just uncertain. No one has a crystal ball. You don't know. Through that, you have to build a brand awareness, right? And that's what I said earlier, where some days you struggle to get out of bed because maybe the day before you had, some server failed. You got to pay 2 devs who are now rebelling because they have bills to pay and, you haven't paid them yet. Your cloud bill came due from AWS and it's $10,000, right? And you have to pitch to an investor today, right? You have to pretend everything's great. The best pitch that I have seen in my entire career, when we got to the projections, it was a three slide deck, actually. And the founder said, we anticipate at best 500 users over the next 12 months. And when it got to the revenue, it had a big question mark. We don't know. From an investor perspective, that raw honesty, I had a thumbs up. That's the guy that I want to invest in because every business plan and every pitch makes money. Okay. And there are many public projects, and I'll name names, sue me. Right? It's all on chain. You can validate it. Look at Cosmos. Many projects there, and I looked at one of the, and it's out. This is public information. You can go look it up on AADAO, where someone pitched, a blockchain lottery. Projection said, we're going to have 50,000 users. They barely have 200 users. Like, what's the point? So my point is, investors have their own thesis, and there's certain things you look for. Okay, and oftentimes, teams that are honest enough and have the intellectual honesty, right, to be very candid and upfront, then from an investor perspective, you understand where they are and you know that this is a team that, okay, I really want to get involved. And ideologically, I don't touch teams that I can't, get involved with on a day-to-day basis. We do financial projections, operations, metrics, go-to-market strategy, making phone calls, doing introductions. I operate as a member of the team for zero pay. And I'm going to talk about that very briefly. And please, any questions, throw them in chat. So from a product market fit perspective, the foundation of no one cares about the features. Okay. Put yourself in the shoes of the person who has to write a check. You could reverse gravity. But at the end of the day, an investor looks at it as, okay, how many people can use this product is this thing ready to scale? Okay. You could build a rocket ship. It's not going to leave the tarmac if no one can fly. So in that sense, decentralization makes this critical because now you have access that you never had before. And as a smaller team, take advantage of it because investors understand. A good investor is a partner. We know you have bills to pay. And I'll give you an example. A team comes in and says, okay, we want $250K to get us going. As an investor, I know very well that between lawyers, accountants, deal review, and all of that is going to cost at least $35,000 in just fees to craft the shareholder agreements, operating agreements, clawback clauses, all of that. So your $250K just got kneecapped by $35K. Easy. Let's say 40, because lawyers tend to, they take their time, they want to bill hours and all that. So the $250K ask you have is now $210. And I also know as a startup, you probably have at least another $30,000 in bills you have to pay, right? So the first $70K of your investment, your $250K just got kneecapped by $70,000. So net, you might end up with $150K when it's all said and done. So if your projections and all that is based on your $250K, I know right out the gate, your hands are tied behind your back. And that's why honesty and transparency are very, very important. And when we look at users and customers or investors alike, solutions that address genuine user needs and demonstrate traction, okay, in that target market. And an investor overlooks all of that, all of those issues to say, okay, let's take it. You want 250, we know you're going to end up with 150. Let's put a plan together. This is where Web3 has a lot of friction, because you have a lot of very technical folks and many who have no idea how to run a business. Okay, I don't want to hear about the product. It's fit for service. It's fit for purpose. We can always get there, right? But financial modeling, operations modeling, okay, basic money management, how do we optimize for that? One of the teams I advise, I basically, they were paying money to go to these pitches, to go to pitch events. I'm like, stop. Pitching events are a racket. Half the people there are accountants and consultants trying to sell you their service. Okay? Ditch the pitch. Just launch. Okay? Save your money. Stop pitching. A real investor will find you. Trust me. And I say that from experience, because back in the late 2000s, I went to a pitching event, and the guy who wrote the first check, Ani is his name, and we've done a lot of deals after that. He said, I'll see you in the lobby. Just give me the highlights. Okay. Barely 5-minute conversation. And today we're still very close, and we've done a lot of deals together. So my point is, focusing solely on innovative technology without clear key value prop, it can hinder fundraising efforts. So ditch the pitch, focus on your key value prop, build, and just launch. Because you get early feedback, access to infrastructure, decentralized infrastructure. You can readily go to market. You don't need vanity metrics. And the thesis and the mindset is, how do you align those expectations with potential investors? Think about the earliest investor assumes the most risk, because that's the riskiest part of a project, right? The later investors, they come in, i.e. VCs, when everything has been de-risked. So teams have to also understand that the earlier investor is looking at this as, I don't care if you've built the next best thing in Web3. I'm the guy giving you $500,000 of my money, okay? Because the real exchange of funds is what counts. The same way I talked, a few days ago about, guys, people who have millions of dollars in crypto, but they're still paying rent. Right? Look, take profits, pay your taxes, do what you have to do, but your level, so there's a psychological dimension to this. And those things come out when you present to customers, potential investors. Your investors are also your customers. If I can't use a product, I'm not touching it. Period. If I can't use it, why would I want to, invest in it? So investors also have their pain points. So the data, the fields to the right are some of the questionnaires that I use within our investment group, and I work with Frontiers Acquisitions, Connecticut Innovation, Grey Wolf, and a few others, from Connecticut to Texas and Utah and London. And those are the basic questions that go in. Are you trying to get out of this thing in 3 to 5 years? Are you trying to hold? Are you buying this for transformation reasons? Those 3 points there are very, very loaded. Earlier investors, I want to get out in 3 to 5 years. So there's got to be a beginning and an end. Okay, so you put in 250, earlier side, you want to exit the next. So you want to rapidly help the project build. And the founders have to be mature enough and be intellectually flexible, because founders tend to deal with everybody thinks they know your company better than you do. But it's also important to listen to feedback. When someone's telling you, hey, I get what you're doing, however, have you considered these other options from a scaling perspective? And earlier investors bring that expertise, because I am trying to help you grow so that I can exit. It's not a charity. Okay. And I'm not looking for $1 billion. Okay. If I put in 500, if I can 10X, I'm good. Leave that for the next person who wants to go make $1 billion, heaven help you. So, and I know this isn't music to people's ears, but it's important to understand what an investor's thesis is and how they operate and what value they bring beyond writing a check. One of my worst experiences was an investor who wrote a check and felt they could inject themselves into everything. So it's a constant balancing act, is my point. And I'm not going to bore you with this slide. It just shows you basically, how innovation has risen in the shorter time capsule over the last 2 to 3 centuries, when we went from mechanical computing to vacuum tubes and in the transistor era, where the value, right, was in proprietary hardware. And then it morphed into the value morphed into, Windows and Intel monopoly, leveraging an ISV ecosystem, which you're talking about, value-added resellers, systems integrators, you think of Ingram Micro and the big Web2 shops, Dell, EMC, and, Oracle and the rest of you. And then it evolved into cloud computing, which is the web era, Web2 basically. And now we're in the decentralization era, where value accrues across the network. And HNS, the HNSs of the world play a vital role in that. Think about financial access. One of the craziest stories that I experienced very recently actually was a chain trying to solve for financial inclusion. And it's Visa, actually, and this public info, so you can look it up. They spent $6 million trying to bring financial inclusion to Afghanistan, and a few other, some other stands out there, but they only had 23 transactions. And it failed because they were charging interest on each transaction. And in Islamic law, interest is haram. And according to Islamic law, if I lend you $10, you pay me back $10, not $10.20. And you would think the geniuses over there would have figured that out before spending all that money. So my point is, understand how the market is evolving, based on your trajectory and where you are along that value chain. All right, I'm almost done here. I'm almost hitting time. Now, what's the biggest challenge in Web3? As I said earlier, lower the cognitive load, because you can't scale what you can't simplify. It's simple. Google and Yahoo, people forget. Google was offered to Yahoo for pennies on the dollar. They said no. If you go to Yahoo's homepage right now at this very moment, and I challenge anyone to go there, within 5 seconds, you'll have anxiety. There's so much going on, and it's all bad news, and it puts you in a bad mood. Why would I want to put my users in a bad mood? Right? Whereas you go to Google, love or hate the company, it's one bar, and you start your own journey, and whatever it takes you, heaven help you. And it applies to anything. Consider toiletries, right? A shampoo bottle. People don't know this, but the push to serve was invented by Johnson & Johnson, and they collect a royalty on every push to serve bottle, bottle manufactured around the world. It's easy to use. Prior to that, you had a screw top, right? You're in the shower, you want to put your shampoo on, and you're trying to close the screw top while you're trying to serve it and all that, but push to serve, just pushing. Same thing with a car. Teslas, no buttons. You just get in and drive. Every other car has 1,000 buttons that you rarely ever use. So my point is, simple scales, period. You can't scale what you can't simplify, period. Humans love low cognitive load, okay? If I have 50 browser tabs open, guess what? The one that's most active is the one that's easiest to use. Simple fact. So I always say start with the design and user experience and back into the tech, because from an investor perspective, I want to see something I can use and show off. That encourages investment. And when startups want to raise funds, it doesn't matter how good your software is. I don't care, 80-20, 80% of the benefits is in 20% of the features. Okay. An investor wants to see that 20%, what actually matters. I don't care if you build the next generation of DeFi wallet. Can I swap easy? Can I convert my tokens into, fiat to book an Airbnb? Things like that. I want my privacy. I'm a maxi because I'm a diehard max. I just love mask, period. And I use it. Privacy, because I believe privacy is a fundamental human right, period. And anyone who gives me that, simple, clear as day, guess what? We're making that investment. So if you think of your investors as your customers, the easier you make it, the faster you get to the money, period. I always say, and again, this is from failures and successes. Every meeting after the third meeting, you're not getting them. If you've met with an investor more than 3 times, they're not writing a check. Okay, period. A legit investor by the third meeting should have a memo or at least a draft term sheet for you, especially in the earlier stages. And for God's sake, keep your cap table simple. Okay? The more complicated the cap table is, friends and family rounds, these are the friends, swap your equity for tokens and all that. Guess what? No early investor is going to touch that, because we're going to burn money on lawyers and accountants trying to figure it all out. By the time you get your money, you've burned through 25% of it. And I say that from experience. And finally, please, vanity projects suck. Okay? 10,000 likes and 10 users is a non-investable story. Period. It's that simple. No one cares about likes. Care about users, daily active users, monthly active users. Guerrilla karate chop your way to investment. Leverage adjacent ecosystems. Okay, build bridges, not walls. So if we were talking to other ecosystems, an investor sees that and go, oh, okay, they understand organic growth. Don't open up a slide with, we have 50,000 followers and 10,000 likes per post. My first question is, okay, you have 50,000 followers, do you have 50,000 users? 10 times out of 10, the answer is no. And it's a shame, because unfortunately, a lot of marketers have tricked a lot of founders into falling into this vanity metrics trap. And so we have, 10 million followers. Yeah, big deal. If you have 10 million followers, you don't need me, right? So some of the real world problems I talk about: financial inclusion, decentralized storage and access, decentralized networks, social media, data ownership and monetization, and decentralized trade, things like that. Real world problems that are scalable, because an early stage investor sees a lot of risk. And if you've thought through those things, then an early stage investor helps you get to your. So my job is not just to put money in. My job is to help you get to the next investment. So that 250, 500K I put up, is 10X, and I can roll it into the next invest, because future investors want to see that your prior investors are fully supportive. So that's that on-ramp. And we did it with CloudMost, we did it with Praetor, we did it with a bunch of teams now that are, these companies, they're worth millions in their own. I think Praetor was last appraised for 15 million from a valuation perspective, and that was from a 150K investment. So these things, Steve said earlier in an earlier presentation that there's still maturity. You need adults in the room having these conversations. And unfortunately, a lot of devs don't want to have those uncomfortable conversations. Financial planning, financial modeling, revenue modeling, those things that are not sexy. My job is to be that guy who helps you embrace the pain, because it's not comfortable. But look, I'm 43 years old. I'm in a place where I can do whatever the hell I want to do now. Okay. And having done this a long time, I can tell you there is no substitute for hard work. The things you don't like doing are the things that will make you successful, period. And finally, it's important to align expectations. The focusing solely on crypto native audiences limits potential reach. And what also happens is, it creates a bubble, right? And we see that a lot. And I always pick on Cosmos because, nowhere else is this more prevalent. You see these grant programs keep funding the same teams, getting the same results. And what happens is, where's the key value prop? It becomes a bubble, right? Are we going broad or are we going deep? And what ends up happening with that is you build an echo chamber, right? You go to the same conference, you see the same people building the same stuff, the same validator sets, the same people getting the same grants. It becomes almost nepotistic in a sense. And I'm not throwing daggers around. I kind of am, actually. But the reality is you can't keep pouring water in a basket hoping to fill it up. Okay? To scale, lower the cognitive load, get out of your comfort zone, talk to the people. Web2 users will give you the best feedback because that's that's where the scale is. Web3 users already have context, but it's still very small. Okay, so there you go. So an investor looks at that as, is this thing scalable or not? Okay, my 250, 500K, am I better off putting it somewhere to just go ape into some token and get better returns? But do I really want to support this? Have they thought it through? Because remember, an investment, you can only go that far, as far as, working on your taxes when investments go south. So there's a lot more to fundraising than simply building something cool. Solve real business problems, identify a core market, focus on one, do it exceptionally well. It will grow in the right company, and embrace the pain. Okay, there is no substitute for hard work. It's going to be uncomfortable, but once you understand it, it gets better. That being said, thank you guys. Happy to answer any questions. I think I'm the only one in the presentation. Any questions?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much. It was again a lot of good feedback in the. Sorry, I covered my camera. Get lots of good feedback in the chats. But is there a question? I don't see many questions. I see a lot of people, enjoying it, which I did myself. I guess I could ask one.
Sure.
You say let them find you. Is that towards the beginning? But I feel like there's a lot of these developers that are not maybe good at marketing or promoting, or they're shy, or they're anonymous, or I feel like, is that still the same for them? They're kind of building in their basement, or they're grinding hard building, which we love those people, but don't they need some more help? Or what would you say for them?
Yeah, so that's the pain you have to embrace, right? Because if you think about it, if we all shied away from the things we don't like doing, we'll all never leave the house, right? Would you rather drive somewhere or teleport there, right? You see what I mean? You rather teleport, you can't teleport, so get in your car and drive. So, so it's not fun, from a former prior founder perspective and an investor. There's a lot of people I'd rather not spend time with, but I have to deal with them, right? There's a lot of things that I am uncomfortable with that I have to do. I've had people say all sorts of things that I won't even get into it on this, but if you ever seen The Godfather, there was a scene where Michael Corleone was complaining about the guy who blew himself up in Cuba. And Hyman Roth said, "This is the business we chose." Okay. Period. So put on your big boy or big girl pants, suck it up, and get to work. It's that simple. I'm going to babysit a dog. So the whole point here is I'm that asshole. Pardon my French. Okay. As a dev, I will tell you the things you need to hear, because I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to help you be successful. When soldiers march, they might march to their death, but guess what? They march.
Okay, great. So we do see a question came in. A couple questions are coming in. So we see here the best way to start networking directly with angel investors, Web3.
Well, first things first, build good relationships, because one relationship begets another. Most early stage investors, it's got to be a warm lead. Okay, if I make an introduction and I tell someone within my network a project to look at, they'll pick up the phone. They will spend the time, because time is money. Okay, some rando sending them something, and I get all kinds of things. I don't even look at them. But if it's someone I know, who makes that phone call, I will take a look. Even if I pass on it, I'll give feedback. So time is money. Like people, I mean, the only way to meet legit investors, because the people who walk around having an investor badge, especially at pitching events, they have no business being there. It's just a networking thing. It's good for their ego and all that. But leverage relationships, that's what works. I have never raised money just from a random interaction. It's always been someone who knows someone who helped me out. And that's how I work as well. It's just trust. That's half the due diligence.
Great. Last one. I think we got the next session coming up.
Right.
But the importance of devs being receptive to concepts that are relevant beyond the bubble.
Yeah, just keep an open mind. That's all. Talk to people outside your ecosystem. The best feedback you are going to get, your best users will be people who know nothing, who have no context about what's going on. Reach out. You can't shake hands with clenched fists. This is one ecosystem. This is another one. You can't do that. You got to open it up and you got to talk to people. It's awkward, but just do it.
Okay, great. Sorry, we're really out of time, everybody. Alani, thank you again for coming back. It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Many of us are enjoying it. You're very approachable. I think some people here, people are just trying to make connections, right? I see some basically how to build relationships with some of the other ones, but I guess it's
just reach out.
Just reach out.
Yeah. Reach out. Twitter, this link, reach out. And I always try to respond.
Great. All right, thank you. We're going to next session, Name Layer, which is a startup in Handshake. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.